What is needed in our current global climate, rife with crises and polarization? Who should countries who are grappling with social, political, or economic hurdles look to for help and support? The answer? A leader. Another question that arises is who, given the volatile nature of the current global geopolitical state, checks all the boxes that is required of a leader. Some of the most influential people around the world have all pointed in one direction: India, the living embodiment of all the virtues that characterize a leader.
Ответственную, по-настоящему ответственную и достойную великой державы позицию, которую занимает Индия на международной арене по всем ключевым вопросам глобальной повестки дня.
We're deeply grateful to our Indian partners for the way they have led the G20 to date.
It has and shares the common values of the West and the common values of the East.
India deserves a much greater place at the UN, and the UN should address the reform dialogue.
This praise from leaders all around the world comes within a span of 100 hours. The list of why India is being acknowledged as an epitome of peace, inclusivity, and leadership at different global fora is long and compelling. Join us today as we make the case that India is the only country in the world that can bridge the divide in this increasingly hostile world. The United Nations, with unanimous Indo-Pacific support, appointed India as the non-permanent member to the UN Security Council for the 8th time in 2021. This is an honor, no doubt. However, why was India, the second most populous country with increasingly bright economic prospects, not on the permanent UNSC table? Why has a select group denied and is continuing to deny India her fair share of representation? The course that followed India's appointment has been even more significant. India, adhering to her pro-people, pro-world stance, highlighted and pursued issues that previous UNSC compositions had largely remained insensitive to. From a standalone comprehensive discussion on maritime security, to a resolution on war-torn Taliban-ruled Afghanistan, to food security and human rights of all those who have been rendered dispossessed in Syria and Yemen, India has ensured that the world discussed and deliberated on what matters the most. India, also known as the pharmacy of the world, in spite of being self-sufficient in manufacturing and transportation of medicines and vaccines, made concerted efforts to ensure patent waiver on vaccines. India has also been equally proactive in immunizing the world, as it was in administering vaccine doses to its own people.
India is always world's pharmacist. I have found that India reached not only to the neighborhood, but also as far as Latin America and the Caribbean and the Pacific.
From assisting the most deprived African countries during the COVID crisis, to providing both money and material to economically collapsing Afghanistan, India has always set aside politics for people. It is critical to note that India has engaged in these acts despite being aware of the fact that she will not be reciprocated favorably in some cases. There were apprehensions within power corridors, and in fact, outright opposition from some quarters among the masses when India decided to launch relief and rescue efforts for Turkey in the aftermath of the massive earthquake last month. Turkey, in flagrant violation of the UN position and disregard to Indian sovereignty, has time and time again sided with terrorism promoter Pakistan on several platforms. This, however, didn't stop India from being the first responder when the crisis descended upon the nation. Turkey expectedly took an anti-India position within weeks of receiving Indian help on a global platform. However, nowhere does this imply that India will not help the country in the future. Because this is what India does. This is what a leader does. India does not abandon her values for short-term gratification, competitive advantage, or dirty political gains. Unless provoked, India, despite having one of the largest and most powerful set of armed forces, has never flexed its military muscles. India's smaller neighbors have all benefited from India's friendly outreach gestures. India has, on many occasions, come to the rescue of its economically dwindling neighbors. Sri Lanka, which has been affected by its worst economic crisis in 7 decades, was supported with over $3.8 billion USD of packages, including credit lines, deferred import payments, and currency swaps between the period of January of 2022 and July of 2022 alone. India came to Sri Lanka's rescue when it was going through its worst economic phase ever. India also recently set aside $24.5 million USD for war-torn Afghanistan. As per the government statement provided in Lok Sabha, the lower house of Indian Parliament, as many as 37 lines of credit worth $14.27 billion USD have been provided to 5 of India's neighboring nations. More and more countries prefer reaching out to India for economic assistance, as Indian help doesn't come with any strings attached, unlike Chinese assistance. India's economic rise, coupled with her deft, people-friendly diplomacy, have made one clear statement. India is not only extremely powerful, but also increasingly trusted by all.
The progress of India in these last years has been remarkable and extraordinary, and I think the position of India now, this is again my view as an outsider, is potentially more powerful than it's ever been.
At a time when she attained the momentum needed for her rapid industrialization, India also agreed to net zero, a global campaign for minimizing carbon emissions until zero for the greater interests of the global good. Many of the world's greatest economies industrialize with no such commitment to environmental protection goals. India's commitment comes at a time when many global bodies and alliances are increasingly being questioned for their trustworthiness and transparency. India has proven that it will not cave into foreign pressure, especially Western pressure. India, while always maintaining a people-first policy, has shown that it will draw lines when they need to be drawn. No amount of prime-time or op-ed pressure could force India into altering her position on the Russia-Ukraine war. In fact, both the warring sides, on different occasions, have urged the global community to incorporate an Indian presence at the highest level of decision-making.
Ответственную, по-настоящему ответственную и достойную великой державы позицию, которую занимает Индия на международной арене по всем ключевым вопросам глобальной повестки дня.
This is an imbalance when Africa, Latin America, most of Asia, Central and Eastern Europe comply with the right of veto that they themselves never had. And this is what Ukraine is talking about. And have you ever heard such words from Russia? But it's a permanent member of the Security Council. For some reason. For what reason? No Japan or Brazil, no Turkey or India, no Germany or Ukraine. The day will come when this will be resolved.
India's insistence on purchasing Russian oil, despite much international pressure for sanctions, needs to be looked at more broadly, as India's decision was based on protecting the economic well-being of 1/6 of the global population. Indian trade, economics, and investment policies have been hailed across the world for their transparent transactions. India has consistently floated the idea of reformed multilateralism and has also continually urged the world to be respectful to the territorial sovereignty of all. While China and the United States have been accused by many countries for predatory, expansionist, and intrusive foreign policy, Indian foreign policy has been pro-people and pro-dialogue. Indian actions have reinforced her position of working for peace and people, not for divisions and war. From International Solar Alliance in line with global endeavors to counter climate change, to Yoga Day, a campaign to promote a healthy lifestyle, Indian propositions have direct, concrete benefits for humanity. When countries world over have been engaged in conspiring with and against each other, Brand India has lived up to its vision of the 5 S's: SALMAN, respect; Samvad, dialogue; Shanti, peace; Sahyog, cooperation; and Samriddhi, prosperity. India has practiced and continues to practice and promote these 5 ideals, for she preaches and practices Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is one family.